everybody. Welcome to the newest edition of Think Suburbia, the podcast of the Suburban Virginia Republican Coalition. I'm Jill Cook, one of the co-founders of SUVGOP and co-host of the podcast. And I will introduce you in a moment to Mary Campbell, another founder of SUVGOP and the co-host of the podcast. And Mary, we are both really thrilled to welcome our guest, Maureen Brody. Mary.
Maureen, we are so delighted to have you with us today. So thank you for joining us. We know that you are running for the House of Delegates in the 39th District. Can you tell us a little bit about the location or demographics of your district?
Sure. The district is basically shaped like the continent of Africa. And but it's missing like Libya, the Sudan, and Algeria. But other than that, other than that, it looks pretty much like it starts down where Lorton and Springfield meet, and then it branches upward a little bit into Franconia, and then through central Springfield, North Springfield, and into Annandale, and a little bit of right where Lincolnia starts.
Wow, that's a pretty packed district.
It is
stuff going on. And the demographics, is it all homogeneous? I mean, it
is pretty much. It's very largely a white upper middle class district. There are, of course, because it's Northern Virginia, we have a lot of different ethnicities here, but largely it's very successful. We have a couple of pockets of lower income areas in the central Springfield, Lynbrook type area. But other than that, mostly these are pretty wealthy people, pretty well off. And business people, influential people, federal workers.
Excellent. So, they know what's going on. Hopefully they know what's going on in politics and policy. So you are a lifelong resident of Fairfax County. You went to high school in Fairfax County. So is this true? You're currently serving as chair of one magisterial district and co-chair of another, Lee and Mount Vernon. That's quite a task. Having been a district chair in Drainesville, understand that's a lot of work to do, and running as a candidate. So that's pretty amazing. But as in those positions, you've seen the political transformation here in Fairfax County and Northern Virginia in the past several years. And was that one of the motivating factors for you to get in the race and run?
Well, I think for me, I love doing the district chair work because it's really at the grassroots level, supporting the best candidates and getting people themselves out and motivated, and getting the party structure organized so that good candidates can get the support they need. And I've loved doing that. But one of the things that I'm also committed to is making sure that people have a choice. And my opponent has largely run unopposed for years now. She was opposed in 2019, but that was not a super successful effort. And so I brashly said, "Over my dead body, will there be an unopposed candidate?" And so the chairman of the Fairfax County GOP, a week before the filing deadline, said, "Hey, Maureen, the lady in your district is unopposed." And I said, "Oh boy." But I thought, well, it's a pretty good segue because I've been doing so much volunteer work for so long here in 39. So I thought, well, I'll raise my hand. I'll give it a shot. See if the people are ready for a change.
Maureen, we know that you are a former economist for the Defense Intelligence Agency prior to raising your children. And since that time, you have been involved in many community organizations, including president of your HOA. Could you tell us how your past experiences have helped you in developing business development and resource management and really preparing you to handle this job, because we know you are so well qualified?
Well, I guess I would say to that working at DIA was the most enlightening thing, was how bureaucracies work and don't work, and the dysfunction of the government, and how difficult it is for little people to get their voices heard by the big people. And I always found that so instructive everywhere I went. I became very sensitized to the fact that there are very bright people out there in the community, out there at the worker bee level, who are not really heard at the policy level. And so I just became sensitized to that. And so as I grew in the positions that I was blessed to have, I would say, the Homeowners Association kind of sounds like it was a thing, but that was more of a learning experience for me. The place that I really would say that I learned the most and did the most good was as PTA president at Lee High School. It was a job that was, again, like this candidate position, was a vacancy that people didn't really want to step into because it's difficult and there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of bickering and fighting, and people don't want that. People don't like that kind of thing. And I personally am a little bit of a conflict avoider, but I'm also a solutions-oriented person. I like to solve problems. And a lot of times I can see into the source of the problem, which allows me to help fix it. So for example, at Lee, the school board had permitted all of the wealthier white families to start calving off and placing their students either as communities or one by one into a more affluent school near us. So Lee High School became somewhat of a pocket of poverty. We were at that time the largest Title I recipient in the county high school system. And it only became worse, and it decreased our population at Lee High School to the point where we lost resources. We lost languages. We didn't have AP, except for like one course in psychology or something like that. They didn't have the kind of training for teachers. There was just a lot of resource problems. And so a band of parents kind of got together and started making noise about it. And as PTA president, I was able to kind of push that up one more level to get the regional superintendent, the principal, and eventually Dr. Braband, who at that time was not superintendent, involved. And we had a good principal who was very much interested in the student population. We were many students at Lee come from immigrant families where there were not resources. They're either coming as unaccompanied minors or they're coming from new immigrant families, and the resources just were not there to give them the English skills, to even inform them as to why they were in a school in the first place. This is not part of the culture they came from.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, I learned a lot there about problem solving and about getting everybody working together. And luckily we had good leadership and good parents to move it forward.
That's a great segue actually into my next question and the topic of education. Now you say you're a PTA president, you also homeschooled your children. So I was going to ask how the homeschooling is a very increasingly attractive option for a lot of parents, given the situation with the school boards and their decisions and their policies and all. But so first of all, I'm sure that background in both of those areas helped you, but how did you stop homeschooling at a certain age and then before high school? I'm just curious. Yeah.
So for each of my kids, we had a variety of needs, and I felt like it was important for our children. So my children went to one was homeschooled pretty much all the way through, graduated from homeschool and is now in law school. One of the other children went to a parochial school, was homeschooled for a little while, and then went to Lee High School. And then a third went to a combination of parochial school, a lot of homeschool, and then Lee High School. So it just depends on, as a parent, where you think your child has the greatest need and the most potential success. So for us, those blends at those different times were important.
So it's good to have options. And that's my question. I mean, what do you see as the public school problem? You've seen it from all sides.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. That's what I was just going to say, is that for the when my oldest daughter was very little, I was already seeing problems. I mean, Mary is 28 now, and I was already seeing serious problems when she was just 2 years old in the school system. And I mean, anything from the poor socialization, the disrespect toward the teachers. I hate to say it, but the lack of quality teachers. There are a lot of them just punching the ticket. The system that had just an SOL kind of, test to the, there was no love of learning being taught. And you could already see back then the beginnings of this critical race theory starting to seep in with some of the more progressive teachers. And I just didn't want it for my daughter. I just thought, this is not a healthy environment. And she at that time was a very shy person. I just didn't think the schools were set up to deal with somebody, and she's a very bright child. And I just didn't think the schools were set up to deal with her. And then that, as I see it today, I think school choice is absolutely critical because parents know their children the best. It's not necessarily some sort of anti-government stance to say, I don't want my child to go to a government school. People have different reasons at different times in their child's lives for where they want to educate them. And the parents ought to be empowered to do that. And I personally also think that the government should be financially permitting parents to do that as well, because it shouldn't only be the upper middle class that can make these decisions to send a child to private school or to homeschool. You're paying tax dollars. If we really truly believe that education is a public good, then we need to financially support whatever mode of education the parents choose. And I'll add one thing, if you'll let me. One of my great things that I learned at Lee High School was that we absolutely have to reform high school education. And my suggestion is ending general education at the end of 10th grade and allowing families to choose the next 2 years. Do you want to go into a college preparatory route, or do you want to go into a professional certification? And by professional certification, I don't just mean high school ASE and automotive stuff. I mean a professional certification that you walk out of school and you're qualified to be a paralegal, an allied health professional, or an HVAC repairman, an electrician, whatever. But it should be those last 2 years really dedicated to what you're going to do when you walk out those doors. Right now, we don't have that.
So, Maureen, this year we know that we have a record number of Republicans running in the House of Delegates. I can tell you I've been involved in politics for about 40 years, and I am extremely impressed with the quality of the candidates that we have running this year, including yourself. So how have you worked with the other Republicans that are running in this election? How have you all enhanced each other's campaigns? And why do you think it's important that you all work together?
Well, I would say that anytime that you get 17 people together, you're going to have some disagreements. We each have our different levels. I'm extremely conservative, and some people are not very conservative as Republicans. But I think that we have a great deal of respect for each other because the goal is the same. The goal is to promote families. The goal is to promote our communities and to secure these things in a way that everybody can have an opportunity to get ahead. We're all in agreement on that, which distinguishes us from our opponents, who are almost uniformly opposed in their actions, at least. I don't care what they say in their words, but in their actions, they are diametrically opposed to all 17 of these candidates. So that's the first bit of good news, and we're supportive of each other in that way. The second thing I would say is that we do share ideas. We sit around and are able to say to each other, this is what I've been doing that's successful. This is what I've requested from the GOP that's been successful. This is how I got some money. This is how I got a bunch of free stuff. And that's edifying because as a brand new candidate, the structure just really isn't there to give every single candidate the kind of support that they need from the hierarchy. And so it's good for us to help support each other. But I will say, as district chair in Lee and co-chair in Mount Vernon, I have been thrilled, absolutely thrilled with the support that we've gotten from the Fairfax GOP. Anything that I request in support of our candidates here, we have 39, 42, 43, and 44 are all in Lee and Mount Vernon. Whatever we request, we receive. And so that has been enormously helpful. And that's in terms of door knocking parties. Sometimes we go out together and help each other. And that's data sharing, all of that kind of stuff.
I would say, I think that's awesome because, as you know, we have a great statewide governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general candidates. And one of the things that especially our governor, Glenn Youngkin, has been talking about since he first got into this race was the importance of us winning back a certain number of House seats. So every race in the state with this House is very important.
And if you don't mind me interrupting you there, just to say, the Youngkin campaign has been so incredibly supportive of the House delegates, House delegate candidates. They provide us with all sorts of resources that would cost a fortune for us to purchase. So we very much appreciate all that they do for us.
They are impressive.
And we're happy to support them. You know, so when we go out distributing our literature, we take their literature, we ask their survey questions also, and we're happy to do it because he's a quality candidate. Winsome is a phenomenal woman. And Jason's a great solid choice for Attorney General, and so far superior to his opponent. We're very happy to get the vote out for them.
We love the concept of the team effort. It is really something wonderful to watch this year, and let's hope it, it pays off. So we're almost at the end of our time here. Usually we stop for a moment and ask very briefly if the candidate wants to share some personal hobbies, interests, very briefly what you do when you're not campaigning or PTAing.
So now my children are grown and I'm not really involved in the school system anymore, but I would say that my two favorite things are home improvement and adopt a highway projects. I think it's so important we live in, God has made Virginia beautiful, and now we're the stewards of it. So keeping care of our roadways, our streams, our woodlands is so important. And I like being outdoors anyway. So going and scraping up junk out of the gutters and picking up trash out of the streams and planting flowers in the medians and that kind of stuff, I enjoy doing anyway. And when I'm out there working in a median strip or picking up trash, the people who drive by and walk by are so grateful. The people who ride those bike paths that we're trimming are so thankful. And just that community spirit, they feel it. And I'm glad to be a part of it.
Maureen, you are such an impressive candidate. We really wish you the very best. How can people volunteer to help you? How can they donate? And what is your website?
Well, I'll answer backwards. BrodyForVirginia.com is the website. Brody, F-O-R, BrodyForVirginia.com. And that website has all the information people need to get in touch with me. It has my email address, my phone number, a donate button, and it links to us so that you can sign up to help volunteer as well. So I hope people will go there. It also has my Facebook link, my Gab link, various ways to get a hold of me. So I really hope people will jump in.
Well, thank you so much for coming today. We have really enjoyed our time together.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Maureen. And we would like to thank our viewing and listening audience, and thank you for watching this edition of Think Suburbia. You can go to our website, SUVGOP.com, and you can go to the drop-down menu and see all of our podcasts. This is I think the third year we're in the midst of doing podcasts, and mostly on candidates, but some issues. So you can go to the drop-down menu and see all the wonderful things that we have done. And thank you for listening this time, and we'll see you on the next edition of Think Suburbia.